All right, so this is part 2 to the last video I made about being non-binary, and just giving like some background and detail about how I kind of got to the point of identifying that way and what that looks like for me. And I figured it would be good to make a part 2 just about general life, day-to-day life out in the world and what that looks like. I think that being non-binary is something that's so personal. I think gender generally is personal. I don't really think it matters what you identify as, but being non-binary specifically, I think is such a personal experience that I would prefer to make the videos after this first one that I did more about that part, the personal experience, just because I don't want these videos to be too definition based, if that makes sense, because I think I said this in my last video, being non-binary means different things to different people, and I don't think that it would be doing anybody justice if I sat here trying to like always go into nitty-gritty about, okay, non-binary means this and this is what this should be and all that kind of stuff. Like I just don't really think that that's helpful versus just sharing what my experiences are and what I like for myself and hoping that people can connect with it in some way, shape, or form. So I may reiterate a couple things that I already mentioned in the first video, but just going more into depth this time. And yeah, I'm kind of winging this. I didn't really have like a set list of things I was going to say, but I know one thing in particular that I wanted to touch on, which somebody commented on the last video, was just the stress, maybe not stress, just maybe the heaviness that comes with feeling like you have to explain things and making the active choice not to. And that not necessarily meaning that the person that you're talking to is like annoying you or like they just are being ignorant or being disrespectful, not even. It's just there's like a certain kind of heaviness going out into the world, being non-binary, feeling like every interaction that you have with a new person that is, meant to be longer than 2 minutes, somebody that you're going to have to interact with, that you are kind of going to be examined. Obviously, I think we all do it to some degree. Some people are just less discreet about it and they're annoying about it. But when we go out into the world, we all see people, we have interactions with people, whether we mean to or not. You are going to kind of analyze the person in front of you more often than not. I don't think that that's a crime to do that. But as a non-binary person, that doesn't always necessarily look a certain kind of way for people to like quickly understand. And maybe people who are non-binary can relate to this. I know that I can tell when I am walking into a room and somebody is looking at me trying to like figure me out. And when I say figure me out, it's not that they're being necessarily disrespectful. The staring part, I think it's just disrespectful to stare at anybody. I think that that's just extremely obnoxious and annoying. And I actually hate when people do that, and it's a pet peeve. But I can tell when somebody is like trying to like figure me out just by looking at me, and they're not quite, I can tell when their like brain seems like they're having a hard time making sense of me. That's the phrase I always use. And at this point, I feel like it used to make me really uncomfortable because it felt like I was like always walking into a room and feeling like you're out of place is like extremely like exhausting. I don't know. It's just really, really exhausting. So add on top of that, when you actually are talking to somebody and you can clearly see that, I don't know. I feel like in everyday conversations, I'm starting to realize how much gender comes up in some kind of way, even if it's not like directly. And depending on who you're talking to, depending on how you're being addressed, it can become this instant, like I have to make a choice right now. Should I say something about my gender and make it known very directly? Or should I just kind of let this moment pass? And I feel like depending on the day, sometimes I have the energy to, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it depends on, just the setting. And if it's me and my partner there, I don't have any issue saying anything in front of her and she doesn't mind at all. But just like if we're trying to just have a good time and spend time with each other and like me wanting to just focus on that, sometimes it is very helpful that I don't address anything about being non-binary, because it kind of mentally kind of takes me away from what I'm doing sometimes, like not in a crazy way, but it can be very distracting, especially if especially depends on how the interaction is going. Like if it's a cool interaction, if it's like pleasant, I may be inclined to share it really quick or just let it pass. Like, okay, this is not making me feel uncomfortable per se. But if it's somebody that's like obviously either being like kind of rude or just kind of like careless and just kind of like clearly saying things that it's like kind of like, do I look like I want to be talked to that way, if that makes sense? I wish I could go more in detail about that, but it's really just a feeling. Like I feel like sometimes people will say certain things and I'm just like, well, do I look like I want to be addressed that way, or do I look like, you know what I mean? And obviously there's a lot of gray area there, because like I'm not trying to, you know, paint this person in front of me in my head as like this bad person. They don't know me. They don't know anything about me. You know what I mean? But it's kind of like I saw a video on Instagram, I think, I forget the creator's name, but just kind of like when somebody is looking at you and they make an assumption about what you are in their reality, in their head, and instead of kind of like looking at it as a blank canvas of like, I don't know this person, so therefore let me keep things neutral with how I address them. And I know that for people who, you know, have never thought about this or who's new to this topic, that can sound like, well, man, that sounds like a lot of work. Like, why? Like, not why, but just like, wow, that sounds like a lot of work for like a stranger that doesn't know you. Versus me, and it's, you know, like how my brain works, I could completely understand going in somewhere and not like me going in somewhere and just automatically saying, ma'am. Like, I don't even do that to people that visibly may appear to be female or male or whatever. Like, I just try to keep my language general, just because you just never know. And I know I'm going off of my own experiences. And that's not to say if you don't do that, that you're a bad person or something wrong. But I think as a non-binary person, you start to think about those things. Those things start to become such a second or first nature, that you just start to kind of pick up on just how binary the world is. Like you go to restaurants, you go to stores, you go, you know, you check out in the cashier line, like just how people address people, other people, it's just sometimes very, very binary. And it's something that it just depends on the day, you know. I think that I'm just now starting to realize how to kind of pick and choose what that looks like for me. I said this in my last video. And really just being realistic about it from my own mental capacity, because it's exhausting. Like, it is sometimes just very, very exhausting. I don't deal too much with communicating with people who clearly don't want to understand. I don't even waste my time with that anymore, just because what's the point? But for people, this is more so about people in the everyday world. That part is pretty tough sometimes, especially when you are, you know, already having a bad day, or you may be feeling not so great about yourself when it comes to, you know, topics of gender, whatever that may look like for you. And you go out into the world and just, you're automatically like thrown into these different boxes, and just, you know, and I've had it even on the other end where some people, specifically men, will think that I want to be interacted with a certain kind of way just because I'm masculine presenting, instead of just getting to know me. And I've actually had some better experiences with that. I've definitely made a couple male friends where I live. You know, I've been here for about a few years now, and I've always wanted to make more male friends, but it's kind of hard. Which maybe that can be going into my next topic, is being non-binary and making friends, and how that looks within predominantly feminine presenting spaces and predominantly masculine presenting spaces. I'm trying to think of the words in real time of like what makes sense. So just, you know, especially heterosexual spaces. Let me put it that way. Heterosexual spaces that are very clearly heterosexual spaces. I think that being a non-binary person is definitely hard, because I think people, even the people who are really trying, you can tell that they still are struggling with like, okay, so if this person looks more masculine and they clearly don't, you know, identify with anything feminine or what it means to be a woman, they must let me just go on the extreme other end and let me like treat them like one of my cisgender male friends and go about it that way. Which I've been in situations like that where I'm just like, oh no, like, you know, whether that be how you talk about women or just, I don't even know. I'm not gonna go into that, like the patriarchal stuff that you know goes on in certain conversations and just all of that. Like, it is sometimes like really awkward to have to like see somebody figure out in real time how they should talk to you, even though you're just standing there. Like, I don't demand a lot when I'm like getting to know people or talking to people and stuff like that. I try to go with the flow of the conversation. I try to be very, I try to pay attention to things that maybe they said the last time just to make conversation, just because I feel like I've noticed in my experience with talking to people who are not as, educated on like gender and queer topics or whatever, that sometimes it's just easier to kind of get the attention off you first, and then maybe as time goes on you can share or however you want to bring that up. Even me explaining it, like even that, as you can tell, it's like effort. It's a lot of thinking that has to go into how you interact with new people, and it's exhausting sometimes. That's something that I will say is a con to, I don't want to say a con, but it feels like a con sometimes, not identifying in the way that the world thinks that you should, or that is easy for the world to understand. Because it's like every interaction, like you have to kind of be very, everything has to be kind of curated if you want to feel comfortable and walk around being able to still be social. Like I feel like there's just certain things that you have to be on the lookout for and be mindful of, that just is exhausting. So back to making like male friends and stuff, I have found that there, not that I didn't think that there was, but there are absolutely guys out there, cisgender heterosexual males, that truly aren't looking for you to like make sense in their head. I only come across like a few. My barber, he's very, I think I told him that I will be have a preferred name now, Breon. And he really didn't, like, it was more like what came about, how did that come about, like with the name change and stuff like that. It was just a casual conversation. It was really nice because I'm used to interacting with males, straight males specifically. In my case, this is just me being honest, straight black males who just really have a hard time wrapping their brain around the topic and just can't, it's just like, okay, doesn't compute error. You know what I mean? And you can feel it in the shift of how they converse with you, versus the few male friends that I've come across, my barber and two other guys that I've met. I can tell that they're very just like, hey, you seem really cool. Let's talk about whatever. Like, it's just natural conversation. And they kind of go off of my energy of how I want to talk about it, if I want to talk about it at all. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's been a really, really nice change of pace, because I've not necessarily been able to have open conversations about gender with black straight men really ever, so this is like my first time being able to, like, not that I don't sit down and talk to them directly about it, but I can tell that it's either not a topic, it's not something that comes up, or it's not really something that matters. Because I also don't necessarily want to go around, just like a straight person doesn't want to go around or doesn't need to go around saying, okay, so this is how I view me being straight. Like, that's not normal. That's not how people communicate, like. And sometimes I don't even necessarily feel the need to share it with every male person I come across. Like, I have one friend that I never talked to about it, but it doesn't matter because we both enjoy basketball, and the times that I do interact with him, it's just like, hey, what's up? How you doing? You going to go hoop later? Whatever. It's just like real casual, which I think as a non-binary person is really, really nice, having casual interactions that gender isn't even a thought or a topic, because that can be exhausting. Like, not like other genders don't have to do that, like mostly straight people. If you're a straight person, you don't walk into a room and that's like, on today's list of things to talk about. Like, it's just not necessary, unless I feel inclined to say, hey, just FYI, like if I notice that maybe somebody that I'm going to be seeing regularly is constantly calling me she, or constantly saying things like that, yes, I'm definitely going to say something, because I don't want to be called that. Like, that's a non-negotiable for me. But if it's just us hanging out, us getting to know each other on like a very, like, I see you a couple times a week just at the gym or when I get my hair cut, I'm not going to do that. Just because I don't want our interactions to become, extremely wrapped up into my gender. Like, I think that's been my whole thing my whole life, is like, I want people to just know me for me. And if those things come up, which they will, and I think that's great when they do naturally, then we can have conversations and it can be chill. It doesn't need to be anything more or less than that. And coming across cisgender men who can clearly, like, kind of read a room. I don't know. Maybe that's a good way to put it. Read a room and realize, like, wait, like, this person is just a cool person, and I don't need to like interrogate them or try to, I don't have to try to figure them out right now, because that's not how you, I mean, I just don't think that that's how you, should go about anybody, no matter what they identify as or what they look like or whatever the case is. And if you are going to do it, just do it in your head and move on, kind of thing. So, um, that's been definitely more of a positive experience. It's just having different interactions with different kinds of people that I probably wouldn't have before, and kind of being able to have some good experiences with other masculine people, cisgender men, and just people that I have wanted to be able to have more interactions with and be friends with and stuff like that. Because I have had female friends. I've never not had female friends, so that part of it is kind of like, okay, I have that part, but I've always wanted to have masculine friends and people who just identify more like me, I guess, if that makes sense. I don't know, I'm rambling. But anyway, I feel like that took a long time to explain. I feel like this is a little choppy because I wasn't really too prepared for like exactly what I want to say. But I feel like the ideas typically come once I start talking. So that's the second thing. And maybe we'll end on number 3. What would number 3 be for like day to day? I would say dealing with maybe the feeling that I get internally when somebody does say she or her, or if I'm with my partner and they say ladies, like there's like something internally, physically, that happens when that is said, that makes me like kind of freeze a little bit, and I'm noticing it more, and kind of like how I just kind of like pause in time, just because I think it's not so much I'm irritated at the person. It really is never about the person, unless they're really being disrespectful, obviously. But what I'm talking about is just everyday interactions that are just normal. People are being nice or whatever, but they say you know girls or she or ladies or whatever, and it just visibly to my partner, because she knows when I'm like, ugh, like I'm feeling something. But I would say that's something I'm still working on. It's just kind of like the feeling in real time of being called something that you don't want to be called, and reconciling that in real time, and not letting it sit for too long, because I can, like, my brain can process like, oh, this person doesn't know that happens like automatically, but the feeling inside is something that I'm still trying to like identify, um, exactly what it is, and how to handle that in real time. I feel like that's something that is definitely gonna be a work in progress, just because when you're at home and your home is like a safe space for you. I don't deal with that when I'm at home, obviously, because when I'm around my close circle of people, friends, and things like that, like I don't have to worry about those things, because they already know, or we already have those conversations, or they just understand. Versus going out into the world, it can be very off-putting when you go from like being in kind of a safe haven on this topic, and going out to the world of people who don't know you, and then you're kind of like, things are thrown at you that you weren't expecting, like being called she, or somebody interacting with you in a particular way that they think that they should be interacting with you, that's just making you really uncomfortable. And it's like, there's been times that I'm just like, okay, I'm just ready to go home now. Like my energy like completely just depleted after a certain interaction. So I'm just like, okay, like I just want to go home, like kind of that feeling sometimes, like this is why I don't go nowhere kind of thing, which is not true. I've always been a let's get out the house kind of person, but sometimes it can make you feel like, especially when you're unaware of it and you just realize, hey, that made me feel something. It can be very taxing. It can be very, very, very taxing, physically and mentally. It can be drain you in real time. So that's something that I feel like has gotten much better over the past year or so. I'm starting to realize how to identify things and kind of like process it and move on from it. There's rarely things nowadays that really like stop me in my tracks. I feel like, even if it's like weird energy or stares, I still get stares regardless, but I feel like I'm less, what's the word when you're less, what is the word when you're going in somewhere and you're like really, edgy, or like paying attention to everything? I don't know. It's a word I'm looking for that I can't think of right now, but I feel myself in public spaces being less, looking over my shoulder kind of thing. I feel like I can relax more in public now, because I have kind of like clearly identified what I do and don't like, how to respond to myself in the moment, and just kind of like work through my feelings as it's happening and just kind of let it go, or not even, not even give it any of my energy. Even if I hear something or see something, knowing when to say, I'm just going to ignore that and go back to what I was doing and just move on. So, I feel like that has definitely gotten better, and it's something that I have seen a huge, huge change in with myself over the past years, just not being so vigilant. That's the word I was looking for. Not being so vigilant when I'm out and about. And as a non-binary person, that was not always easy. And I'm sure there'll be other instances of that, going forward. And I'm sure that there's going to be other times that I probably feel like I have to look over my shoulder, and I just will have to deal with that when it comes. But this video is about at 20 minutes now, so I'm going to stop here. I definitely going to probably make a part 3. I do want to talk about travel, being a non-binary person, being a masculine presenting person while traveling. There are definitely differences, definitely things that are worse when you are traveling as a non-binary person and as a masculine presenting person, and what that looks like just individually, and also, within a relationship, when we go out in public together and all that kind of stuff. So I will likely make another video talking about more about that, specifically traveling to different states within the U.S., but also traveling out of the country. Me and my partner have been out of the country a couple times, and and have experienced some, interesting things that I feel would be worth sharing. And for other queer people generally, not even just non-binary, queer people can relate to just how challenging it can be traveling anywhere, let alone out of the country, and just how much that comes with that and how much preparation you have to do. So I will make another video about that soon. Of course, feel free to leave a comment about anything you want me to talk about, or how your experience has been just in day-to-day life, being non-binary or queer, or straight or gay or whatever you identify as. Feel free to share that, because I am more than happy to engage about those things and just hear your experiences. So I'll be making another video here soon. I don't know if I'll do the part 3 right after this one, but maybe. We'll see. So sorry this video was really choppy. I was thinking about what I was saying in real time, and I feel like, I don't know, this topic generally can be a little bit daunting, because yet again, it feels like I'm explaining something, explaining things that I'm actively in real life trying to be mindful about not over explaining, because it's tiring. But this isn't. This is actually really therapeutic and nice to share it on a platform like this for other people who may want to hear about it or learn, or, share their experiences as well. So, all right, I don't have nothing else to say right now. I'll be back though at some point. See ya.